This is Let's Talk Teens, a parenting podcast sharing tips on raising amazing teenagers. We are both certified life coaches that have worked with teenagers as coaches, mentors, and teachers. We are sharing what we have found to work best when dealing with teens and tough issues.
This is Let's Talk Teens with Abbi and Cheree, episode 30, How to Use the Let Them Theory with Your Teens.
Hey, I'm sure you have been aware that there is a new book out by Mel Robbins, right? And it's called The Let Them Theory. And
I'm loving it, by the way, just to interject. I'm not finished. I'm loving it.
I know, and I'm so glad that you're reading it too, Sheree, because it really is like taking the internet by storm. I'm sure our listeners are like, "Oh yeah, I've heard of that book," right? And so I was able to get it on Audible, and I was like so excited to digest it. I love Mel Robbins. I love what she has to say, and
Same.
I wanted to kind of give some parenting tips based on the let them theory because I feel like it's so powerful. And Mel even says this in her book. The let them theory is fabulous for adult on adult interactions, but when it comes to adult to child or adult to teen, you have to tweak it just slightly. And so I thought, well, let's talk about those tweaks and how you can use this theory because it really has been changing. And I find myself saying that in my head all the time. Let them, let them, let them, right?
Mhm.
So I love in the book, and Sheree, this is right in the first, so I know you've read it. Mel actually discovered, kind of like came upon this theory with her teenage son. So her teenage son was going to prom. And for my mamas and dads with boys out there, you know that they don't care as much about prom as your daughters did, right? And so her son was just the same. He wasn't even going to go up until like a week before. And then all of a sudden he was like, I'm going. So she had to rush and get his suit and rush and buy his special shoes. And she kept asking him about like the corsage. Should like I need to order a corsage for you, right? And he said, no, my date doesn't want one, right? And Mel reports in the story, she's like, I was freaking out like for him. Like I didn't know why he wasn't making more plans and why I couldn't get him to order the corsage, right? And so prom finally shows up and she has gone to the store. That's why I love her because I'm like, I would have done this. She's actually gone to the store. I think she made a corsage for his date, even though he said, Mom, don't do it. Like, she doesn't want one, just in case, right? And so his date, they show up to do pictures, and sure enough, she didn't want the corsage, right? She had like made her own. And so she was having her feelings hurt about that. She's like, oh, I made this, right? I've spent money. And then they go to do pictures and it starts to rain. And she's like, "Okay, you're gonna need a jacket." And her son's like, "I don't want a jacket, right?" And in her mom brain, she's going, "You're gonna ruin your dress and your suit and those brand new shoes I just got you." Like it's all firing off. And then they go to do the pictures. And after the pictures are done, the son turns to his date and is like, I don't know, where do you want to go for dinner? And Mel realizes her son hasn't made reservations, right? And they pick like this taco joint. And in her mind, she's like, they're not going to have enough seating for a group this big. Like, I do they want to go get tacos? That's not prom appropriate. Like, all these things. And so she starts pulling out her phone and she's like, "Oh, let me help you guys. Let me call some restaurants." And finally, her older daughter had to take her aside and go, "Mom, let them, let them go get tacos for prom. Let them figure out that there's not enough space in the restaurant for a group that big. Let them be in the rain, right? Like, let them do all these things." And that's when it really clicked. And she said, it was really hard, but she just walked over. She gave her son some money and she said, "Go have the best time. Like, here's some money for dinner. And, I'll see you back at when curfew was." And I just thought, what a perfect example of what it's really like to raise a teenager. Because we've all experienced that where you're like, wait, what? You haven't made plans? Or wait, you didn't call ahead? Or nobody has a car, right? Like and as a parent, you're like, oh my gosh. But one of the biggest takeaways that I got from that book when it came to parenting your teen is like, let them, right? Let them make these what we might call a mistake, right? They might call it an adventure. Let them make those choices, right?
I just want to interject on one of the things I noticed when in reading that book so far is that when when she was trying to control everything, he was so irritated at her, right? Like it talks about how irritated he was with her. But when she finally got that, let them, and she just went and gave him money and they could just go have a fun time, he gave her like the biggest hug, right? The connection that happened when she let go and let him figure it out was amazing versus that disconnect. He kind of was trying to push her away because she was in the middle of, thinking she knew what was best and controlling. And I think that's just so fascinating to apply that with your teenagers. The more we try to control, it actually disconnects. Where when we can let go and let them learn by their own experiences, that's when the connection happens. That's when they know you're there to be there for them when they really need it.
Oh, Cheree, yes. And because I feel like a lot of parents, come to us or message us because the relationship is under stress, is under strain, and it typically is because we're trying to control them. Now, we wouldn't call it that, right? We see it as I'm trying to help, I'm trying to let them to avoid some of the mistakes I've made, right? And your help and advice, like, yes, could Mel's son in this story probably had a more what we would call a traditional prom had he followed his mom's advice? Like, absolutely. But also, maybe he didn't want that, right? And so let them. Now, I know you're sitting there going, okay, so do I just let my teen do whatever they want, right? Like, let them. No, right? We have some caveats, and I found that these really are like my guiding posts in parenting. So I always ask myself when my child wants to do something or a teenager wants to do something, my first question is, well, is it safe? Right? And I go through the mental list of physically, emotionally, spiritually, like all of it, right? Because there's some things that your teen would argue. They're like, Mom, this is so safe. Jumping off of this cliff into the water is so safe. And I'd be like, with my mom brain, I'm going to say no, right? There's other things like, Mom, I want to go to this movie. And, I know with the rating or the reviews that that's not mentally safe for my teen, right? I don't want them to have those images in their head. So then again, right, with my mom brain, I might say no. And my teen's going to have really big feelings about those. But I always have that as my checklist, right? Mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, does this keep my teen safe? And if the answer is like, yeah, or doesn't really apply, then I ask, well, okay, is it legal? Like, is this okay if they do this with the law and other people? And if the answer again is yes, right? So if I have two yeses to those, then let them, right? Let them go with their friends and go hang out in something that you think would be so dumb and not fun at all. Like, let them. Let them not plan prom up until the very last second. And then, they're going to come to you and be like, Mom, I need help with this and this. And we're going to go, okay, like I'm going to let them have this experience that is teenagehood.
And let them sometimes, fail and let them sometimes even make what we would call a big mistake. Maybe, it would hurt them physically or spiritually or emotionally. And I'm not saying I want that for my teen ever, but just from raising teens and having all young adults now, I think some of those experiences of where they did have a little pain in some of those areas was vital for their growth. And we get in our head of like, oh, this isn't safe. And I think I love what you said about that. Like, is this going to be safe? And kind of base our let them off of that. But sometimes even we have to say, this might not be 100% safe, but how, like, there is a little bit of, I can't control this anyway. And it's just creating this strife between us that I need to let them because I need to let go and let them learn by their own experience. Hope that makes sense. I'm not because I'm like
Yes.
there there is this growth sometimes that comes only through some pain.
Yeah, and I was trying to think of some examples, and I can think of one that happened this week on a very small scale, but my little guy who's at school, he came up to me in the morning and he said, Mom, can I put blue dye in my hair, right? We have this washable blue dye. And we did it on Saturday, right? But now it's Monday for school. And in my head, I went, well, I think the teacher, like, that was a big deal when I was in school. You couldn't wear bright colored hair color? And so I started it on that of like, well, listen, I think your teacher might not like that. I'm not sure what the rules are, right? And he was like, not having it. He was like, Mom, please. And then I realized, I was like, you know what? I'm going to let him. And guess what? I might get an email from the teacher, or he might have his teacher say, "Hey, don't put that in your hair again." But I was like, you know what? That's a consequence that we can live with. right? Like that's not gonna unravel us. So I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna let him do this. Now, might be fine. I might get a call from the teacher, right? But I'm consciously making the decision to let him. So we put in a little bit of blue dye. And so that's a baby example, right? Now your teen might be coming to you being like, Mom, I want to go on this, adventure with my friends. And we want to be sure we always, know the safety precautions. But like what you're saying, Sheree, like even even with all the legal precautions of like, well, you're all 16 and you all have your license, we know the craziness that can be teenage boys, right? But sometimes we have to be like, okay, now you know our family rules, right? You know these things, and I'm going to let you have this experience. But I really, I have these expectations for you, but I'm going to let you do this.
Yeah, and I think that's the hard part sometimes of parenting because we do have these rules and we, just talked about that even in our last episode. But there is this part of like letting them break the rules. And it's so backwards because we just talked about we have these non-negotiables, right? But I remember this experience with one of my teens and he was with his friends and they actually got in trouble by the law. They had taken sauce packages and were throwing them at cars, and they got in trouble and had to pay some fines and had to do some service and all the things. And did we have some family rules that some non-negotiables that would have kept him from doing that? Sure. And he broke those rules, right? And the consequences were he was the oldest in the group and he got to pay a pretty good fine. And that was where we were like, yeah, let him sauce some
Mm-hmm.
cars, which we hated. And it was embarrassing because, you know, it was on social media and it was really embarrassing as a parent to be like, yeah, that was my kid. And yet, like, such valuable experiences for him to have to pay those fines. And guess what? I let him break the rules, not that I would have wanted him to, but then I also let him pay the fine and let
Yep.
him, with have the consequences of it. And I think that was a profound, powerful experience that has shaped him for what he's doing today and who he is today. And I'm as weird as it sounds now, I'm like thankful for those experiences he had because he's doing really great. But he needed some of those hard experiences to learn how to become his best self and what he really wanted out of life.
Yeah. I was just thinking of another that I think is very common, right? Where your son or daughter, you're like, who are you going to take to the Christmas dance? Or who do you want to invite on this? And they're like, oh, I want to bring so and so. And it's the ex-boyfriend, it's the girl that shattered their heart a million times. And you as a mom or dad, you're like, no, right? Like they are
Yeah.
such.
Oh, that's such a real thing.
Right, you're like, don't take them to prom. Like, why would you
Yeah.
drop a dime on them? They've broken your heart. They've cheated on you. Like all these things, but let them, right? Let them make that choice because it would, to me, there's battles not worth having, right? And even though you're like, this pains my heart, I hate that this person has control in your life, right? But we're like, okay, you get to decide, right, who you're in a relationship with. You get to decide these things, and I'm going to let them. Now, something just popped in my head as I was sharing that example. Well, what if they want to hang out with friends or a boyfriend, girlfriend that is like, I'm going to give some extremes here, doing drugs or selling them drugs, or is when they're involved with this person, they're smoking weed or something, right? Obviously, I'm going to step in and not just let them hang out with that person, right? But that goes back to those questions, right? Is that safe for my teen? No, right? So that's a battle worth having. So I would hate if you're sitting here going, wow, okay, he wants to hang out with his girlfriend who's a pothead. Let's not do that, right? Like, let's take a step back. Now, if it's, I want to hang out with this girl that she's broken my heart a million times and she's so wishy-washy on me, and we as a parent are like, I can't even stand them because they've broken my baby's heart. Well, is that, safe? Is it illegal? Well, no, right? So, okay, I'm going to let them.
Those are such good examples to use, both of those, because there are just times where, again, it's like, okay, these are my non-negotiables or these are keeping you safe. And then there's those, okay, I hate this situation for my kid. I know they're going to get hurt. I know this isn't the best thing for them, and I'm going to let them. I'm going to let them learn. And so it's learning to navigate that as parents and asking those questions, just like you talked about, of is this safe? Just really checking in.
Well, if you can't tell, Cherie and I really highly recommend the Let Them Theory book. It's been a really
Absolutely.
It's been a really great one for kind of reshaping my mindset about a lot of things. So we suggest that. We also highly suggest our podcast. So thank you for listening, and we hope you'll listen to our next episode. Thank you for listening to Let's Talk Teens with Cheree Murdock and Abbi Winslow. If you are looking for more tips to help your teenager, here's where you can find us. You can find Cheree Murdock on Instagram at Cheree Murdock Coaching or on her website, ChereeMurdock.com. You can find me, Abbi, on Instagram as Abbi Winslow or on my website, AbbiWinslow.com. Please rate and review our podcast and share with a fellow parent. Thanks for listening.